You're listening to Your Rivers Are Wrong, the podcast.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, or evening, or night. We do them all today. Welcome back to the Your Rivers Are Wrong podcast. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Merle.
And I'm the other host, and my name is Dante.
Yeah. And in this podcast, we talk about the wonderful whimsies of world building. Yeah, we're still doing it. The arts and aesthetics of setting up a setting and telling stories born from it. There we go. Almost messed it up. We are at episode 74 today. Can you believe that number? That's a lot. I mean, that's not even how many weeks are in a year. That's not even like... Some people just don't even like get as old as 74. Like, that's so much. That's so much.
That's a terrible way to put it.
You know, I mean, I started it. I gotta finish this argument.
Amazing.
I'm a great host. Anyway, moving on. How are you doing?
I'm feeling my mortality just a little bit.
Yeah, that was exactly the goal for this episode.
Really? Is that in your notes?
No, please, let's not talk about this anymore.
Today on Your Rivers Are Wrong, reflect
mortality.
On the end of days. You know, speaking of, I think this week, the week that we're recording this, is the week of our 2-year landmark. We've been doing this since mid-December of 2021.
Is that right? Whoa.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize. Whoa, that's crazy. 2 years of a podcast.
Honestly, breakneck pace. We're doing fantastic.
That's we're making so many episodes. I can't believe it. That's a lot. And we also got like, you know, we did it in a healthy way. We took breaks and everything. It's not like pumping them out without like brain power left to do them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
Let's see what has been happening. I guess the holiday season is closing in.
As of
Definitely
recording, we're like ready for Christmas times.
Oh yeah, Christmas, New Year, all the gatherings. Everyone's planning their little events. We got every weekend is booked out. This is our last recording of the year, I believe, until January. So closing out 2023. You guys are going to be well into 2024 when you're listening to this, sometime end of January, maybe, possibly, whenever we drop this. Who knows? Speaking from the past.
We're on a roll today. What's happening?
It's a good,
you know, finish with a bang.
Many kind of day.
Yeah.
I think my big weekend was definitely last week.
Yeah. But I feel like you're still recovering. Maybe. Yeah. Which you're totally allowed to do. Yeah. Please do so.
Absolutely. This week I'm cooling off. I have this thing at work where towards the end of the shift, when everybody's already gone home and there's only a couple of us, I have a holiday trend of playing a different Christmas album every day. So I got to find an artist and play their whole album while we're working. And it's been a ride because I'm running out of artists, really. I've gone through the Mariah Carey, I've done the Bing Crosby, I've done a couple of the older ones. Yesterday we were listening to like a meme album and it was just like...
I hate that for you. All day, that's like, terrible.
No, I'm saving the best for last. Of course, you got to save the classics for the end.
Yeah, okay.
But this little interim period right here, I have to cover like 5 or 6 days of artists. And I'm really like digging into who I know. Yeah.
Okay, there's one really great one that my brother recommended. I think his name is Josh Turner. He has like super nice mellowy guitar stuff. I will send it to you.
That's good. Josh
it's the one I don't really love. Sorry for everyone who starts to hate me from the sentence on. I don't really like Christmas music. I mean, I'm very quickly fed up with it, but then the whole month is not finished yet, and you just have to like plow through all of them. But this one I actually like. So if I like it, then the whole world will probably like it. So it's very nice.
Josh Turner gets a shout out on this podcast.
Yeah,
let it be known.
If he gets famous after this, I want some credits.
Did Josh Turner on an interview next month? Yeah, I don't know where it came from.
Thank you guys.
I think someone mentioned me on a podcast and suddenly everyone, the world over.
You can track that back, right? Like we'll have like proper royalties from that and stuff or however that works. Wait, that's not how it works. Anyway, that sounds like a pretty good time. And also like you're sort of in the, what's that called? In the dip of like 2 highs now. Like you got the busy weekend, trying to recover. Busy, much more busyness coming up.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're ramping up.
Yeah.
How's your week been?
Pretty good. I'm mostly just very looking forward to it and purposefully not planning anything. Because I feel like I've been a little bit too busy this year. No shit, Sherlock. And I was talking with my mom and she's like, you gotta like not plan anything. And I'm like, oh, maybe that's a good idea. Yeah, maybe I should like try to have a proper holiday for once. So maybe I should do that. So I'm very much looking forward to just like taking walks and watching shitty Christmas movies or good Christmas movies. You know, recommendations are welcome. Please, you know, yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. No, that's not going to be in time. We're going to get so much Christmas references now, like in 2024. And I'm like, well, thanks.
Yeah, this is going to be all passe.
I forgot we're delayed.
Listen to it.
Yeah, it's okay. Anyway, walking. There's been like snow and stuff already, which is ramping up the mood here, I think. Like that's pretty nice. That's pretty cozy. Mostly that stuff. And currently also the business stressy period at work and stuff is also done mostly. Yesterday I had a big event for work that I had to travel to a little bit. So that's some stress release because that's always a little bit, you know, nerve-wracking in a good way, like excited nerve-wracking, but still a little bit nerve-wracking. So I feel like the big stuff is over and now I can really sort of trickle out of the year, you know? That's pretty good.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
I really feel like I've cleaned up a lot of deadlines for the year and stepping
good.
into the new year, it's like, oh, this is totally fine.
Clean slate. That's the best feeling. Yeah.
Anything else before we jump into this podcast episode?
I think I don't have that much else to talk about, except for my topic.
Perfect transition.
Perfect bridge. Yeah, we're so good at this. Anyway, okay. Maybe it's sort of like an end of the year thing. Maybe this was meant to be that this was the episode that I struggled so hard to find like a good topic. Usually I'm pretty okay about it, but man, this morning I was like, dang, I got nothing, bro. So instead, I'll try to do a little experiment, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Not too crazy. It's still talking and discussing, but related to like what source. Usually we bring either like a theme or, you know, a cliche or any of that. And today I want to start with a little quote from a writer I like, which we actually talked a very tiny amount about in, I think, last episode or the episode before. And this is Leigh Bardugo, and she writes a lot of young adults / adults fantasy books. I think also recently Netflix has turned one of her series into a TV series, which was really good. The Grishaverse. Okay. She's famous for Six of Crows. She's done a lot of stuff, and most, how do you say this? Admirably, that's a word. The thing that I'm so in awe of with her is that she just keeps pumping out books that are just so good. Like yearly, she's released something new, and it's all great. And it doesn't even feel all the same. It's all new books. It's all refreshing and interesting. And I want to read to you a quote from one of the interviews that I think this was one from Writer's Digest. Okay. And just start up the conversation from there.
Digest?
Is it Digest? I don't know. I never say this out loud. I just
Reader's Digest. Yeah, I guess I never think
Writer's
about it like
Digest. That. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we totally do that. And the quote goes as follows. Wait, are you okay?
Guessing. No, you're good.
You want to look this up and pause?
No, we're good.
Okay. So, Writer's Digest interviewed Leigh Bardugo recently. I think somewhere halfway in this year. I will look it up a little bit later. But Leigh Bardugo said the following in that. She says, I start with my characters and with the story, the plot. When a reader enters the first chapter of your book, they're trying to get the bearings. It's our job as authors to give them signals they need in order to be able to navigate that world. The great challenge of world building is not building the world. You could build a world with maps and languages and all these things and still be missing something. It's releasing that information to the reader. The world building that really falls into place first is what I always describe as the sense of power, helping readers understand how power flows in the book. That could mean governmental power, personal power, magical power, whatever. But determining this is going to determine how your characters behave on the page and what they're able or not able to do. And this really got me thinking on what you would call power flow, or what she's calling a sense of power, or how power sort of is the first thing that you, I guess, take from whatever, in this case, you know, book writing gives you without spelling out what your world is like, right? So for today, I think I'm just interested in talking about how power determines how we experience a story or not. Yeah, that's what I got.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a great quote.
Yeah, just give me your first thoughts. Let's just have a nice discussion about this. I think that would be great.
It's similar to when you play tabletop role-playing games in that the first session is about buy-in, right? It's about making sure that everybody's on the same page. They understand the setting. They understand the context. And with that, they understand the flow of motion. They understand where the story is heading or sort of their direction. So when the author mentions flow of power, I kind of see it like the reader being some sort of ghost hovering over the story, watching it piece itself together. And when they're finally comfortable, they kind of slip into the body of the main character and are ready to go.
That's interesting. I love that sort of visual to it. That's really nice.
It's like they're trying to come along for the ride of whatever this story is.
Yeah.
But if they can never get comfortable, they can never get seated, or if this character isn't somebody they want to take this story with, then it's going to be so rocky moving forward, getting everybody involved. I feel like I felt this most prominently when I watched Game of Thrones for the first time. I feel like Game of Thrones episode 1, at least in the original Game of Thrones series and in House of the Dragon, episode 1 is tricky because they're introducing like dozens of characters to you. Everybody in that episode knows what's going on, right? They're all in the know. They're all moving at the pace that they're usually moving during their daily life. And it's only on like a rewatch that you see all the gears in motion. But trying to figure out where you're settling in, whose point of view you're going to be following or who you're going to be empathizing with is always a little bit of a struggle. And for some reads, that's part of the fun, part of the replay value of coming back and realizing all the machinations going on in the works. But to get a normal person into a normal story,
a regular audience.
I really like the quote in saying it's all about kind of situating the reader and getting them ready to kind of take this journey.
So did you have any preconceived like knowledge about Game of Thrones before you started watching the series? Did you read the books or did you know anything about it or not yet?
No, I went in entirely blind.
Because that's interesting. Did you not feel like super confused then in the first episode if they're just throwing all this stuff at you? Do you feel like you needed the understanding of the machinations, so to say?
Well, I feel like there's some series that have a reputation, right? And when you talk about A Song of Ice and Fire, it's like, you know this story is going to be good. So you're willing to kind of stick it out and and try to really get the sense of, if all of my friends like this, then I'll probably like this. I just need to get past
something
the first
to it.
episode.
Yeah.
Right. Usually I give new series 2 or 3 episodes before I'm like, all right, I feel like my time is better spent elsewhere. Yeah, like usually episode 2 is when you really got to start piecing the story together and getting everything set up. But yeah, I mean, I trusted the story to get the message to me. Like, I didn't expect to be jumbled for much longer. And it's only in stories that have that grand sort of scale that you really kind of got to wait and figure things out.
Yeah.
But I also find stories that are intentionally vague for too long a little bit frustrating. I'm spending time here trying to really understand what's going on.
Help me out here. Yeah.
And I don't want the payoff in 7 episodes. I'm trying to enjoy myself like now.
I know what you mean. Yeah. I mean, the balance is so finicky though. I feel like it reminds me a little bit of I don't know which episode this was, but earlier we talked about the movie/storyline Rebecca, where you have one character that's completely not there for the entire storyline, but everyone's lives evolve around her basically. Yeah, look it up. I forgot which one it was, but yeah, it was a great episode because it's kind of a similar topic, right? Like how much interest can you still gain from your reader or audience if you present something that's just there in only the characters' minds, right? In the Rebecca case, it was a character that passed away and only the characters knew what happened and you had to sort of piece it together later or figure it out almost like a sort of mystery, sort of puzzle pieces falling into place. But it can also be in this way when the whole world is understanding of how it spins basically and you just get thrown into a strange planet and you're like, well, I don't know how the law works. How do you all, why is this important? I mean, like, should I be scared now? I don't know. Is this a scary thing in your world? Apparently it is because everyone freaks out now. But yeah, and that's sort of the show don't tell mechanism, right? That I guess famously is talked about whenever you talk about sort of, yeah, in this case, like showing something. So showing that something's scary instead of letting somebody explain to you, this is a scary thing, watch out.
Yeah.
Which very often works because you feel like, oh oh dang, this is probably scary, even though I have no idea what's going on. And that the feeling is already much more in your, in the way you experience it, versus if you just have to sort of take it in as a library book. Yeah, but the line there is really thin still, so it's really a sort of balancing act there a little bit.
Like what you said, like a delicate line of how much do I need to spoon feed the audience to the truth?
Yeah.
Or do I trust them to like understand it themselves or be invested enough to try to piece it together on their own?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think specifically of Westworld season 1, which had a very confusing first episode. Well, actually very straightforward first episode. If you watch the whole episode, you immediately understand the setting and the story. And then the next 8 episodes are deliberately like confounding.
What does that mean?
It's showing clips and scenes like out of time and flashbacks and flashing back to present.
Okay.
But they don't tell you if it's a flashback or not. So you never know if things are happening in the present or if they've already happened. They keep the same color grading on all the scenes. You never get that dusty yellow color over the flashback. So
Sure,
you know it's a flashback, right? And that was good. Season 1 of Westworld, honestly, very entertaining. And you spent the time like really putting together the clues. You're like, oh, is this? Is this that? I have a theory, all that thing. And when you're watching it live with a live audience, if you were following it week after week,
cool,
you'd go to Reddit, and everybody would get together and share their theories, right?
Yeah, that's amazing.
And then season 2 came around, and it was just so confusing. It was like deliberately, you're not supposed to know what's going on for 4 or 5 episodes, and it's just like, all right, I'm kind of exhausted. I kind of just need a little bit of closure.
Yeah.
So I'm not just watching this and accepting that nothing makes sense for hours at a time, right? There's a balance. There's a little bit of mystery you can put in because you respect your audience to figure it out. And there's times when it's just too much and you're doing it just to be annoying. Right?
Yeah. I also feel this is very much the discussion that's sometimes, I guess, needs to happen a little bit with stuff that feels very, well, I don't want to say arrogant, because what does that even mean? But like the sort of high art stuff, sometimes it can get so abstract that you're like, yeah, now you're just being abstract because it is artsy and not because it serves the movie or serves the whatever it is that it's making, right? It's sort of like not infantilizing, yeah, your audience as much, but then also there's the other side of the scale there, what you're talking about, where you're like completely just not even making it for an audience, and you're like, why am I even watching this? I don't understand anything. And then you're also like estranging people from your content, which is also not what you want. So there's a very, it's super finicky. And also I think it can exist both in the same story, even like some things you can, for lack of a better term, show don't tell to your audience, and some things you can really explain as because there's a character. I'm sort of thinking of like famous example Harry Potter, right, where Harry is unaware of how everything magical works in sort of Shadow London and stuff. So for the most part, he is being explained why the world works the way it works. Like people are telling them why people have wands, and people are telling them how it is possible that you can walk through walls and blah, blah, blah. The famous summary of Harry Potter, walking through walls. But then there's also this sort of undercurrent happening, which is why it's such an interesting story, that no one tells him about and that no one wants to tell him about, which is the whole sort of Voldemort kind of backstory of the world, I guess, because it is so scary and because he has so much to do with it. And that stuff he's trying to figure out on his own because no one's trying to like help him there. And so a balance doesn't even have to be like choose one point on the spectrum. It can also be like a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and both from either sides. And as long as you make an interesting sort of mix of it, it still works, or it can work if you do it right. And I think in all stories, it's never just one thing, because there's so much that you're trying to learn, especially from a world building heavy fantasy, like very imaginative setting or storyline. There's so much to learn because so much is made up, so much is new to you as the audience. So in ways of learning, like there's so many different ways that you can learn about it. It can either be passive in the background, it can be someone literally telling you, there's many ways of doing it. So it's even probably like beneficial to your story if you use all of the sides of the spectrum constantly. I'm now sort of thinking out loud. But yeah. But it does make sense, yeah. Especially if you're talking about like Westworld, where not even like worlds are variable, but like time and characters, and it's so information dense almost that you need to have a structure for it to be able to like grasp everything that's happening. Yeah.
I find in my own experience, I have to tap back into like when we play these role-playing games.
Mm-hmm.
The concept of player buy-in and investment in the story and the setting, it varies depending on who you're playing with. Some people care very little about the setting, and they're just like, just give me the next monster and let me swing, you know?
Yeah.
Show me how my axe sinks into their body, you know? Like that's what I care about.
Yep.
And sometimes like they'll really get invested in the mystery that you set up. Like you start laying down clues. And sometimes you have people who are very diligent about keeping notes and making sure that that people are picking up what the game master's putting down. You have to kind of adjust that scale depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Gosh, this is going to be a deep cut. There is a...
Go for it, my dude.
There's a side comic, just a small panel, like little art scene of the end of a chapter of Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicles. And if you're listening to this and you know exactly what that is...
That was the longest sentence.
That's wild, and you're crazy.
I don't even know what that is, so good on you.
It's a series made by Clamp in which it's kind of a multiverse of all of the characters they've ever published in other stories coming together and meeting in dimensions. So Card Captor Sakura would be kind of the one everybody knows, but the other characters are also supportive.
Sure.
They have a pretty core cast of 4 characters, and something I can never forget, and it's always been a great way for me to kind of categorize players or readers, I guess, of stories, is this is how the 4 characters read a mystery novel.
I like this premise. Yes.
One character digs into the clues and has a journal and writes down all the notes and tries to figure out the mystery as it's happening. One character has no patience for the mystery, actually has no patience for the book, in fact. The third character already knows the ending. They've already figured it out, but they're playing along and pretending not to know for the sake of first character.
This gets meta very quick.
And fourth character is very bad at mysteries and is just along for the ride and likes being surprised.
Nice.
So
sounds like a good band of friends to me.
So when you put together those 4 characters, it shows you all the different kinds of readers that can experience your story. And you have to realize who you're targeting. You have to realize who you're really appealing to in the story that you're setting up, even at the very beginning. And even as you get towards the end, are people looking for the big dramatic moment? Are they looking for the satisfaction of figuring out the story themselves?
Yeah.
Or are they just along for the ride and you can just kind of focus on the spectacle, the flash, the bang, the wow, this is happening because of this, and this. And they can just be like, whoa. Or if you have very smart players and you can't trick them, you can't fool them. So the game becomes an ever increasingly complex story just to kind of keep them intrigued. It's a very fun dynamic. It's very fun to figure out. And I don't envy authors in them trying to guess what their audience really likes. I'm sure the author of...
that's a big difference, though. Yeah.
How do you pronounce it? Is it Leigh Bardugo?
Yes.
They've published so much material, as you've already said, that they kind of know what their audience really resonates with. And that only comes with time and experience and really testing the waters.
Yeah, for sure. And this is also interesting because here you're very much talking about feedback and how direct it is, right? Because I guess the beauty and the curse of TTRPGs and like having literal live interaction directly as you create the story is that you can immediately gauge if it's fascinating or if it's interesting to the people that are also here for that same story. I guess that also makes it very hard because if you feel like, oh, it's not really working or we're not really getting there, like how do you change it, right? That's pretty hard. But if you it's a very, very different process from literally writing a book and having like 4, 5, 6 versions of it, proofreading it, the whole shebang, and then, sending it out in the world, and then it's not even yours anymore, and the people just will deal with it the way they want to deal with it. And if they love it, then that's great, and you can write more books.
Sure,
and if they're not, it's so out of your hands. And in tabletop like games and storytelling, it's so different because you're all sort of in the dough making together, Yeah. And I was wondering, because you DM a lot as well, like you play a lot, but you DM a lot as well. Do you feel like it's an extra job almost to figure out what it is that they're fascinated about, or is it a sort of seamless thing?
Absolutely. I mean, it's part of the game. It really is part of the game.
Yeah.
I've game mastered for West Marches servers, which means that there are a rotating cast of 20 to 30 players. So the players that join your session, you don't really know who's going to be playing in the story you're running until the night before or 2 nights before when everybody signs up.
And is it also a different kind of group size or no? Depends.
It could be as low as 3 people. It could be as much as 6 people.
Okay.
It really you can choose how many people join the game.
It's like a pool of candidates almost. Yeah.
But I've absolutely looked at the players on my list and revised the session depending on who's joining, because I know certain players really like the nitty gritty of the details of the people they're meeting. And some people really like the combat aspect. And I say, maybe I should just throw in a monster in this scene and this scene just to give them something to vibe with. And I'll know that some characters have their own special backstory. And I'll be like, oh, they're joining for the first time in months. But let's prod a little bit at their character backstory, because I know they'll really like this. And I don't really have much to work with in terms of who they are, but I know that they enjoy this. So I'm revising this and revising this. By the time I run the session, it looks entirely different from what I originally planned.
Yeah, that's wild.
Specifically catered for the people stepping in. Like, that's part of the game. And that's honestly part of the fun, because you kind of play for the reactions of the players. At least I do. I play to see them really get excited and invested. And when they kind of lock in and really engage in the story I'm telling, that's the best possible experience for me. It's nice that tabletop games have that flexibility, and it's super enjoyable.
Yeah, man. I mean, that sounds so hard, but also so nice. Like, it's a very relevant skill to have, and not a lot of people have it, I think, which is also why DMs are so rare, because it's you're holding up a lot of like stuff at the same time when doing it. So yeah, that's really nice. I was also wondering one more thing, which is a little bit of a, how do you say it? Side note, I guess, to this conversation. In the same interview, Leigh Bardugo talks a little bit about her practical way that she writes a novel, which is outlining. And there's a little bit of difference. Like, this is we're really talking about like book writing here, right? Like, it's not too applicable to all mediums or genres per se. Sometimes it is, but specifically for writing a long form book, there's different ways of doing it. There's people that just start writing and don't stop until they're somehow finished or satisfied, and then just distill and sort of take what they like and keep doing that until it's kind of polished like that. Some people are like Leigh Bardugo, very much in need of the structure of the prep of it, the outline of it. So you make a summary, and then you expand on the summary, and then you figure stuff out as you go, and then write based on your framework that you created. Right. And this we talked a little bit about in the past episode as well. And I was wondering, because I know, since we're talking about DMing and stuff a little bit, I know that outlining in Leigh Bardugo's case is also very much tied to world building, because her stuff is super imaginative and, fantasy based mostly. Right. And I know that you are also, like me, very much into sort of wikis and, figuring out your information and making like a sort of structured file or a structured place to put your world building, right? And I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about how outlining, or I guess I wrote this down like wiki making, because that's really how it feels for me. But I don't know if that's relevant for you. But yeah, if you can talk a little bit about how outlining would work for instance, DMing in your case, or how you use it.
This is actually really interesting, because I've been kind of researching new ways to document everything that I've said in the session, so I don't forget like the useful. I don't forget the reality that I myself spoke. Because like, it's very confusing. I remember towards the end of campaign, my players were bringing up stuff, and I'm like, oh, I did say that 3 years ago, didn't I? Whoops. I have you ever read your notes and just patted yourself on the back, like, wow, that was really creative, good job. The terrifying version of that is mostly when I do it. It's like, wow, wait, I made this real. Now I got to figure out how it is part of my reality, because I forgot about it. Yep. I mean, this is a good thing to bring up on our 2-year anniversary of this podcast, I suppose. If you bounce back to episode 2, we talk about the process of world building and really getting started on that. And we reference a conversation between Brennan Lee Mulligan and Matt Mercer, 2 very well-known D&D dungeon masters. And they have the concept of, you have to build your world enough, at least the big landmarks and realities, that filling in the blanks between those big realities is easy. Right. So if you have a city here and a mountain here and a cave here, the stuff in between is pretty easy to make up by context. You don't have to write out every single detail of every single road, because as you move forward with that, as you begin to establish those standing foundations of your world, the things around it will just make sense. They'll simply make sense just due to context and proximity, which is really nice and saves a whole lot of time.
It's true.
But
yeah.
I guess like I feel like the hardest thing to, I guess pulling it back to the quote, the hardest thing to do in a story that you're just starting is establishing what's really important. So not only you can draw conclusions of where this setting is going or growing or expanding, but your players can also interpret and extrapolate what realistically makes sense in this world.
Right.
Like literally last night, I was invited to an impromptu character creation in Blades in the Dark, another system.
Oh, fun.
It has this like dark, edgy, like heist type energy to it. And I was browsing through Pinterest and I say to the DM, like, okay, so where do I, like, can you give me the ground rules of like what is realistic in this world? Like, is magic a thing? Is supernatural? Is it paranormal? Is it high fantasy? Is it more grounded, gritty? And they listed a bunch of examples. And with that, I kind of cross out what didn't make sense. And this is from not even reading the setting. This is from not even reading the background. Just a couple of points of like, it's kind of like Dishonored. It's kind of like Assassin's Creed. Just a little bit more magical and a little bit more ghosts. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I can just get this block of Pinterest art away from me because that has like swords and dragons and all this stuff, right? And I could just kind of focus on this little thing. But yeah, I mean, it's an iterative process, and documenting your history is, I don't know, I'd recommend Notion or OneNote. I use World Anvil, but not as much. And I also am now just straight up using community journals within the game. Like it's just a journal page. And I'm like, fam, you guys write whatever you want here and your notes will help me. And I'll write all my notes here. And this is kind of my public facing notes. It's for me, but it's also for you. So like if a name and a face comes up later, we can refer to both of our notes later,
right, yeah,
and kind of mesh. And obviously I'll have like a little sidebar and
that works, yeah,
a bucket of journals for myself that nobody can see that I can bring in later for surprises and stuff like that. But yeah, long story short, world building is not some people are real concrete about it. That's not me.
Can't be me. Yeah.
It kind of just happens as we go.
Yeah. And it's also just sort of finding the ways that will systematically help you in, finding that world as you go, because it's not really changing the way that you world build, because you sort of have you as in everyone who is into this kind of stuff. Like everyone who's listening to this probably has already a sense of why or how or, what ways they use to do it. But it's just about structuring and sort of being able to listen. Yeah. What you were saying, like remember what you were thinking of or read back what your train of thought was, Yeah. And I think that's, well, maybe, we can expand on this forever, but I think that's going to be good enough for this one.
I think I could just summarize my thoughts in that one thing I said earlier, that if you and your players or your readers get to a point where you can guess what's realistic in this world and kind of plan towards the future of what you want to do or want to see or are willing to witness, once you guys kind of agree on what the setting is and where it could be or what could exist, I feel like that's just a good place to be.
Yeah.
And it's getting to that point. That's the journey, so to speak.
For sure. I like this. This was a good way of having like a little discussion as well. I'm glad it worked out.
I like it.
Sometimes you don't know. You gotta try a little bit of different material. Yeah, but it's nice. Also, like big recommend for Leigh Bardugo's books, because dang, she writes good books. I'm planning on reading so much of them in the Christmas holiday.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah. Okay. Oof. So what we usually do, in case you forgot, because we didn't outline it properly. What we usually do on this podcast is that after we discuss the topic, we got just a little, ending prepared, which is a prompt that we both were. Well, I guess the person hosting brings it and the person not hosting will answer to the prompt. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
In this case, me. So I got a little something for you.
Okay.
Kind of based on the same, you know what my source is today. It's very obvious. That's not fake it. The prompt is as follows, and it's based a little bit on one of my all-time favorites, scenes from one of her books, which I could talk about a little bit later. It's from Six of Crows. Just read it. It's great. But this is the prompt. I want you to, describe or start, or however long it takes, or however long you feel like you want to go. Create a little prologue for me that contains or that sort of explains to us who's the most powerful in the scene.
Ooh.
And you can fill it in whatever you like. However you like.
Yeah. This is
Take your time. Take your time.
This is so interesting because I'm gonna pull inspiration from the least, not even an enjoyable form of media.
Okay.
It is presidential candidacy debates. Because my family was listening to it on the TV, and I'm like, I actually can't stand being in this room right now. Let me just leave.
I love how this is like your passion for this prompt.
It's very specifically. Oh my god!
I like it. Yeah, let's go.
Candidacy debates are exhausting, and you never know if anybody's telling the truth.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of depressing.
What a wild source of inspiration. Yeah, sure. We're gonna start on the fringes of a battlefield. The large plain has been littered with weapons and the remains of armies that clashed hours before. It is a gruesome sight, and as the remaining warriors tend to the dead and work towards the living, we have this tent filled with decorated generals and commanders arguing upon a large map displayed in front of them. They look stressed. They look tired. A number of them are marked up with gashes and trails of soot and blood. And some of them are pristine and have watched from the sidelines, had the grand purview of the battlefield at large. And there's a large slam onto the desk. And it says, "We are losing men faster than we are gaining ground. With the armies that we have remaining, we will not make it to the shoreline. This plan has been a disaster from the start, and I told you all months ago that it would go this way, but nobody listened." Another person raises their voice. "You were too busy parlaying with the forces across the waters, trying to make some sort of treaty that you knew wouldn't happen. If you had just focused up months before and helped to bolster our army and gather realistic allies, then maybe we'd actually have a chance today." Third person chimes in. "This is all because we put so much weight into trusting the forces from the sky. We always knew that they would kind of be flimsy, and it was always just a pipe dream that they would aid us in this battle, but all they did was decorate the clouds with their wingtips, and it did not change the flow of combat at all." And another person chimes in and says, "If only we just pooled our food supplies so our soldiers would be stronger, they could actually be rallied toward this fight with any sort of vigor. They look like they're walking zombies out there. This is not reasonable." And another person chimes up and they say,
people are in it.
this is the real Game of Thrones effect where you don't know who's important yet.
No, I like it.
And it's like, you should have called my family last month. If you gave us the time, then we could have brought the forces from the south to aid us from the oncoming flank. And if you did that, then we would have won this. And someone says, hindsight is 2020. There's no way you could have predicted that all of these things would have happened. You just have to play towards the present. And then one person towards the end, I hate that this is an allegory for America. It really is miserable. And one person brings up, who hasn't spoken this entire time, the seventh person at the table, at a table for 20, says, "We're all playing some sort of game here. We're all trying to put the blame on something, and we're all ignoring the big picture. The guy who determines the end of this war isn't even in the room. And you guys are pretending that any of us will have an impact without even speaking his name.
Oh.
We all know what changes the flow of this battle. We all know the wild card. So why aren't any of us bringing it up?" And there's a small silence that hits the room. There's a bit of floundering of words as people try to go back to their original point. But they realize that some conflicts hinge on a singular mind, a singular person. They recognize, all in this singular moment, that each of them individually can only influence a small portion of the real thing to come. And they all grasp at the straws of what they can wield and what gives them power and what gives them authority, and pretend that the one who has the loudest voice will not deafen them the moment they arrive. The conversation in that room is not the same after that point. There's a floundering of preservation of ego There's a small rallying towards what they can all do next. There's a change in topics, perhaps a diplomacy route, but it all kind of falls on deaf ears as they continue to ignore the voice that is missing, continue to pretend that it's not important. And in that war room, nothing is solved. Things are preserved, egos are protected, and everyone will happily die knowing that their legacy is preserved to this small extent, realizing they're ants in a glass house, a game for others to play. And that's it. That's it. I did my best not trying to give real people power.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And I'm not gonna explain the allegory. If you're in America, you understand what I'm talking about. If you watched the primary, it was an exhausting experience. But
I feel like something's coming out of you. Like you need some release from this, maybe. Like
it was such a, oh my gosh, I don't want to talk about this. It was such a poignant moment that added so much clarity as to why the conversation sounded so empty. It was because there was this big old thing they were just ignoring the entire time. As if anything they were saying really mattered in the grand scope of the real conflict. Crazy stuff. Well, I'm not trying to be here talking about American politics. There's a reason I world build in a fantasy setting.
That's right. We're here for the fake world building. No, but I feel you. You gotta let it out every now and then. I understand. And it makes sense, specifically if it's quote unquote big important people talking about big important stuff, but then sort of selling air, I guess, in a way. That's very frustrating to listen to. Yeah.
I mean, it's the old Harry Potterism, but I'm sure it's present in a lot of other things. And I've heard it in other contexts. It's the, when you think of names and you think of words, the one with the most power is the one you cannot say so lightly. You know?
Dang, that's a quote. Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Things have gravity, and you can pretend like words don't have gravity, but when you say it, when you speak it, it's like something's hit, and that's a true flow of power, so to speak.
I mean, yeah, I think it's the last probably I'll say about it, but yeah, it reminds me of the conversation that I had once with my brother. That's like, you have rich people that want to show that they have a Rolex, you know, because they can afford one, and then you have millionaires, billionaires that just like have a shirt on and don't even care anymore. Yeah, there's a difference there. It's a next level kind of thing. Yep. It do go like that sometimes.
It do be that way.
It do be that way. Yep. Thanks for answering this prompt.
Oh my gosh.
Even if it was tied to the real world a little bit, we don't shy away from that. That's okay too.
An ugly churn in my stomach. But the story is there, I suppose.
Yep. I mean, it's very entertaining. It's basically Game of Thrones. You weren't wrong that way. Take a walk after this.
I'm going to work.
Yeah.
I got to go to my day job.
That's right. So usual.
Oh my gosh, so normal.
And with that, I guess it does bring us finally to the end of this last of the year at least in our side of the time podcast episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. And honestly, thank you for like being here for 2 years. That's crazy. Yeah.
And I know for a fact there are people who have
say that
been
one
here
more time. Yeah, there's been people like from the start. Isn't that so amazing? I can't believe that. Thank you guys so much for listening. You know where to reach us. I'll just say it one more time. We all know it, but never wrong to say it again. yourriversarewrong@gmail.com is the place to be. We'll always check our email. We also got a Twitter, but maybe just use Gmail just in case.
We gotta stop mentioning that Twitter.
Yeah. Well, it happened. I'll stop next year. And then there's that one thing that we all still have to figure out, even in 2024.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I don't want to say that out loud.
And that is...
in 2024, I guess our rivers are still wrong, aren't they?
Rivers are still wrong.
Yeah. Have a good one.
See you next year.
Bye.
See you there. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Your Rivers Are Wrong. If you have any thoughts for topics, prompts, or if you just want to share your thoughts, you can reach us at yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. That's yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. Big thank you goes to Martin Skelligans for our intro and outro music. And most importantly, thank you for listening. We hope to catch you at our next episode. Have a good one.